Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Future, titled Dirty Sprite 2. If you can't tell, I haven't exactly been looking forward to this. See, most people who follow me, they already know my opinion on Future, a below-average rapper with a bad taste for autotune, a complete lack of interesting content, or bars, or punchlines, and an unfortunate knack for picking generic, forgettable trap nonsense for his beats. Or at least that was the case for Honest, his 2014 album that I reviewed and panned pretty harshly, and I stand by that. And when I did that review, I wondered if I'd ever manage to figure out Future's appeal, because as an ignorant MC just slamming out party bangers, his material is either underwhelmed or just annoyed the hell out of me. In short, not a fan, don't like the guy. But even though Future has been bigger and distressingly more influential than ever as an MC, his past year hasn't exactly been good for him. After R&B singer Ciara called off their engagement and dumped him for cheating on her, Future's been cutting a furious swath of curdled anger and bitterness across his mixtapes, none of which have made him look all that good as he embraces his drug-addled hedonism, which could have at least been interesting or presented a compelling moral if Future's bars and messages weren't so painfully shallow or betrayed an ugly pettiness that he was still very much stinging hard from that breakup. None of it had the class or the grace or maturity of songs like Ciara's Excellent I Bet, instead just preferring to wallow in its own debauchery, which is less insensitive and more just kinda boring. But to his credit, Future was slowly becoming a better rapper, at least in terms of his flow and structuring some of his bars on a technical level. And I'd heard that his newest album, dropped with little to no promotion, was planned as a sequel to his breakout mixtape with some of the best beats of his career. Okay, to be honest, I did not expect this to be good, even on that standard, but hey, I'm not against hedonism, so if we can at least make it kind of fun, I'd be interested. So does Dirty Sprite 2 defy the odds? Well, yeah, it actually kind of does. See, here's the insane thing about this album. The more I listened through it, the more I kind of got some of its twisted appeal. And in the hands of a rapper who had a little bit more talent and doesn't need to rely upon autotune or had a little bit more subtext, went a little deeper, this could have been something really potent. A slice of intoxicating debauchery that revels in all sorts of bad taste and tries to cut into the psyche of why the rapper finds some solace in all this hedonism. That doesn't quite happen here, but it is an improvement nonetheless almost across the board, from the instrumentation and production to Future's technical abilities as a rapper to, yeah, even some of the content. I'm as shocked as anybody, and I can't even say this is a good album, but it is better. Be honest about that. And the first thing that helps is that this is primarily Future's affair, with the only guest star being Drake on Where Ya At, tossing off a decent enough verse. And sure, if you find Future's auto-tuned, half incomprehensible warble exasperating, you're not gonna like this. Hell, the lack of more charisma or a sense of humor from the guy is one of the biggest reasons why this album isn't nearly as enticing as it wants to be. But where he has improved is in his flow. He still flubs a lot more rhymes than should ever be excused from a rapper, but in terms of structured cadences that actually connect to each other, he's improved a lot. And considering that the overall feel of this album really shuns mainstream hip-hop in a surprising twist, Future's allowed to push his hoarse rasp a little bit harder, a little bit grittier, and again, he sounds better on these beats than he ever has before. Now granted, a larger factor is that the production has improved considerably. Recruiting his mixtape producers Southside and Zaytoven for a fair few songs was definitely the right step in delivering some nastier, rougher beats that emphasize some decent melodies while maintaining a rough-edged trap feel with the clattering, noisy hi-hats. And while there are some moments that have fragments of a shattered alien tone, this album isn't obliged to bring more pop-friendly, smooth sound, and the production feels significantly more cohesive with the subject matter as the result of that. The buzzing hiss, the warped voices and hollow organ of I Serve the Bass, the creeping keyboards and hints of screaming on the metallic little one, the palpable menace of the piano and the guitar interplay on Stick Talk, the noisy percussion against the hazy groove of Freak Ho, and especially that creeping, fluttering pianos and even the pan flutes on Colossal and Blood on the Money. And while there are definitely production choices that kind of annoy me, on some of the more luxury rap inspired tracks, the rougher trap feel does kind of feel awkward. I don't really like it there. And the squealing siren that comes in on Stick Talk and Rich Sex does nothing for the vibe. I've never liked that sound effect. For the most part, the eerie, hollow, washed out chill of this album really works, forsaking some of the attempts at glamour that A$AP Rocky tried for something that feels a little bit grimier and honestly a little bit more real. Now this is where the content comes into play, and arguably where there's the biggest improvement. On previous albums, Future tried to find some flash or bring more of a pop sensibility to his lifestyle, but on Dirty Sprite 2, he makes the heel turn to bitter nihilism, debauchery as an escape that often picks up some texture as the details that significantly undercuts of the illusion of having it all put together and having it all. The opening musical motif on Thought It Was a Drought, the ugly creaks and slurps of lean and styrofoam, combined with lyrics about beating, choking, and screwing the listener's girl while pissing lean, in Gucci flip-flops no less, does plenty to establish Future as a nasty piece of work, a villain, definitely not a role model, giving up his conscience conscience as he threatens to turn the hood into Iraq and weaponize the little ones, the youth in the hood. And yet, for as many girls as he plows his way through, from groupies to wealthy girls that he puts in his rotation to your girls, he gets little to no satisfaction, preferring the oblivion he finds in drugs that even professes to marry and blood on the money. One of the fair few tracks that doesn't present any of the drug making and consuming as remotely glamorous or fun. Buying Sprite at the gas station, washing blood off his money at the laundromat, throwing cash away to blunt his pain, acutely aware of his own corruption. There is an ugliness to this album that actually makes Future not only marginally more sympathetic, but also makes this album feel more realistic. I can buy the ugliness of this drug trade, it kind of fits a little better. But it's also where I feel this album starts to break apart a bit, as it is the execution of Dirty Sprite 2 might be one of the most stridently anti-drug pieces of art that I've experienced since Requiem for a Dream. A harrowing and pretty damn great movie that I absolutely never want to see again, but I don't think that was Future's intentions. See, it's kind of tricky to gauge, as the anti-social hostility of most of this album doesn't really reveal any populism or deeper messages or themes, but I can see the appeal of this sort of art that channels the worst of human impulses and nihilism pretty much for its own sake. Hell, as many people watched Jersey Shore to laugh at the assholes on display, there were some people who idolized them and wanted to emulate it. But there's two problems with this, both points that Jersey Shore reached in its seasonal run, where the foulness becomes impossible to tolerate, and eventually it started feeling a little bit monochromatic and kind of boring. In the former case, it comes in, thought it was a drought, and Lil One, and groupies, but most on Slave Master, which is already questionable for its central motif, but then features an outro chanting "Long live ASAP Yams," who died from a lean overdose. Now, I get why it was said thematically, but I reckon ASAP Mob isn't gonna take a line like that particularly well, as it can come across as an extremely bad taste at best. But the larger problem is that with more and more listens to this album, the bars and the instrumentation just began running together and feeling kind of tedious, lacking the self-aware insight to deconstruct why Future was chasing all this oblivion and drugs. And while I've said in the past, most nihilistic art for its own sake kind of gets a little bit boring for me, and it's at its worst when it's feeling this aimless. So yeah, in the end, yeah, this is a better album than Honest, and there are different parts of me that can appreciate both the based hedonism and some of the rougher beats, and the barely conscious ugliness that's all on display. But Dirty Sprite 2 lacks the deeper insight to go deeper or darker than this, and Future's tone as a rapper just does not grip me. I don't like all the auto-tune on his voice, even though I will acknowledge his flows have improved. Coupled with the complete lack of any humor and a surprising dearth of solid lines or punchlines, I'm thinking a light 5 out of 10 and only a recommendation if you're kind of curious. It is an interesting listen, both for the more and the less you think about it, but as a whole, Future's still got a long ways to go. He wants to win me over. Just saying. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.